There have been 3 patches to Borderlands 4 since release, including one that dropped earlier today, and for the most part, this has just been pure stability and performance updates to try and curb the issues that people are having with running the game properly. I have heard varying mixed reports, a number of people saying that it runs much better now, but I've also seen at least a couple of people saying it's actually worse, so we'll have to see how this all shakes out, but I do hope they can get this sorted out, because the game is a lot of fun, and I hate for people to not be able to experience cool games that they would enjoy, simply because they aren't capable of running them. That said, today's patch also had a couple of slight non-performance updates, mostly a couple of bugs that can mess your game up a little bit, as well as removing the Gilded Glory Pack legendaries from the standard chest loot pool. They specify that performance is their top priority. With that in mind, the big one to bring up then for actual balance is Vex's Infinite Bleed Loop. The Bloodletter passive gives gun and skill crits a chance to apply a bleed effect, which does damage over time for a portion of the amount that was done originally per second. It stacks upon itself, so multiple crits in a row will just grow the bleed larger and larger and larger. The main issue with this is that it can trigger itself, so if you get some natural crit chance to the point that the bleed ticks crit, then the bleed will re-trigger itself and infinitely grow over and over until it hits the integer cap for the game. This is an absolutely busted interaction. It simply is not how this skill is worded. It's not how it should work, as the status should be neither gun nor skill damage, it should be status damage. This means that its crits should not reapply the debuff to itself, but it does. The main issue with this is that it just sort of removes any real reason to do a proper build for Vex, because this one interaction guaranteed kills any enemy with some minimal amounts of setup. This is fully expected to be nerfed and fixed at some point, but again, Gearbox is clearly currently focused on performance and bug fixes above all else, so anything that is just a purely strength-related issue likely won't be taken down for a bit. On a similar note, I have seen lots of dissent on the Jacob's crit knife modifier, the one that makes it so enemies that are hit by the knife are then guaranteed to be crit by any source of damage for 5 seconds. The main reason that people think this knife needs to be nerfed, they think it is broken, is because of the Vex interaction, as that is what makes the bleed scale ridiculously quickly, is having those crits. But if that interaction was fixed, then this knife would just be a strong ordnance that boosts builds that aren't ordnance focused. It would be very, very good, probably a staple in most high-end builds, but I don't think that warrants nerfing the item. So in my mind, should Bloodletter as a passive get its interaction fixed? Yes, absolutely. Should the Jacob's crit knife modifier be nerfed? No. It's simply not out of the realm of realistic power of the game, it's just a fun build-making component. That said, the other main topic here is the way that the Jacob's ricochet on crit, licensed part, affects weapons that it can randomly roll on. For some weapons, it's not that big of a deal, it's just a fun bonus, but anything that bounces, or that the projectile does not disappear after it hits, it does some pretty ludicrous things. The most commonly known example is the Kickballer legendary shotgun. I see people talking about this all the time. It fires a bouncing ball that explodes every time that it hits something, fun and strong on its own, but if it drops with the Jacob's ricochet accessory modifier, and then you get a crit with the weapon, now every time it will hit, it spawns an extra ball, and the extra ball will count as its own projectile, so if that crits, it will spawn another ball, and because they don't disappear on hit, it just multiplies endlessly until the boss dies pretty much instantly. Similar things happen for Maliwan shotguns with the energy disc underbarrel that also have the Jacob's attachment. The discs bounce, the crits ricochet into bonus discs, and this loops infinitely. Things like this are, I think, the best argument that exists for nerfing the crit knife, as it would be much harder to do this without guaranteed crit chance, but it would still be able to happen. There are still plenty of sources of generic crit chance increases, and even the Jacob's enhancement that gives ricochet chance for non-crits, so this is not something that can be fixed that simply, and in my mind, it's likely to just be part of how the game is going to be moving forwards, unless they do a really serious focused balance patch more so than just like hitting one issue at a time. On a somewhat similar note, we do also know that they are working on stability and performance patches moving forwards, but also we know they are currently working on an FOV slider for console players, which is one of the larger complaints that I've heard from the people playing on consoles, so it's great to see that they are both aware of the issue and working towards making it better. Then just to touch on it, as I don't feel it would be right to ignore it in this style of video, Randy Pitchford has been going wild on Twitter once again. He's telling people to refund the game, he's blaming players for being unable to get their game working optimally, he's suggesting that people are using computers below the recommended specs and that's the problem, and he's basically just fighting tooth and nail against people complaining about the performance of the game. All while the actual developer team is clearly doing their best to fix things instead of just yelling at the players. In his defense, telling people that they should refund the game if they can't play it isn't like bad advice, but it just really comes through with a tone like he's in a place of frustration, where he's angry at the fans and telling them to just go away because he doesn't want to deal with them, rather than giving that as actual advice because he wants to be helpful. It just doesn't shine a great light on the guy or the company. It's not the first time that he said things that piss people off, and it most likely won't be the last, but at least the game itself is getting patches to try and fix these performance issues.